Welcome to Forged in Silence podcast, addressing the issues men face but rarely talk about. Robbie, how are you? Mike, how are you?
Doing very well,
Wonderful.
thank you, Steve.
Waiting on Robbie now.
Oh, you didn't hear my response?
No, I didn't.
I'm wonderful.
I
Excellent.
sandbagged him.
You
I
did. It's
talked
good.
over him.
Excellent. Somebody's got to do it. If it's not me, it's got to be somebody else. So this is great.
Right.
So today we invited Mike Coyne to join us, a guy that I met through Instagram, some social media, and then had a really awesome conversation with on the phone. He's here to talk about trauma and abuse, and mainly, and extremely masculine environments, and he'll kind of dig into why and how that's part of his story and his experience, but really how the silence when it comes to trauma and abuse in men is something that he has found that is a lot more common than he expected, and it's something that's surprised him. So and I believe that wholeheartedly, that and it's part of the stigma, it's part of men staying silent. And I mean, if you couple that with extremely masculine environments, you ain't going to be talking about the stuff that happened to you when you were younger to try and help get you over whatever it is. And you're likely finding unhealthy ways to numb and cope with, or bottle up, or shove down, etc., etc., etc. So, Mike, Robbie, unless you got anything else to add. All right, so Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself and let's get this conversation a rolling.
Okay. Yes, my name is Mike Coyne. I just turned 40 last month. Had a newborn daughter this week, so that's been exciting. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was goading you guys for something. No,
Yeah. No, no, I get it. Lack of sleep, you need it.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's gonna at some point. There's gonna be. I might just like power down. Like something's gonna happen where
He's gonna stop talking partway through, and you're gonna be like, "Oh no, he's updating."
no, no, just froze.
Yeah,
Reboot
I
me.
froze.
can't.
Yeah.
I can't wait to have the conversation with you in 14 years from now, because that's where I'm at with my daughter.
Do you have a 14-year-old?
Yeah,
Oh, that's awesome. Is she your only one?
she is my only one, and she lives with me. So
That's great, man.
single parent over here with a 14-year-old.
Oh, okay. Well, congrats to you.
Same to
Congrats to
you.
you. Yeah. So, my wife and I just had a daughter this week. There's an uh, professionally, what I do now is I am an addiction specialist and a family addiction counselor. So I work with people in various stages of recovery, whether it's going into treatment, more often it is coming out and setting up what you might call, what people often call aftercare plans. However, I shy away from that term because the plans that I like to construct with people are highly they're very curated personally and very detailed and not your it's the standard like go to 90 and 90 that kind of thing. um, and then I've only recently begun working with a couple of clients without without any kind of compulsive disorder. So that's kind of a new thing for me, but again, I still the family component of that has just become sort of a niche for me.
Hmm.
It's been something that I've found, if it's available as a tool, that it's can be really really effective because everybody needs to heal when there's addiction or dysfunction. It's just a fact that everyone in orbit of it is going to be affected by and likely have an effect on. So I really, really, I've just been fascinated and passionate about those dynamics, and really get a lot of satisfaction out of being able to help families and, in turn, like the individual, create just a new paradigm, that they can sort of start fresh, so to speak.
Awesome. So dive in.
Yeah. I guess I should mention that I have a private practice. It's called Curevine. Um, and that
Absolutely.
is
Don't be afraid to
why would I
advertise
not?
yourself.
Yeah.
What the
Don't
hell
be
am I
afraid to
thinking?
advertise yourself.
This is why I'm not a businessman, and probably need to hire one. But yeah, I do it. It's it's a private practice, which is nice. I enjoy that aspect of it, and primary clients are, yeah, people with usually some type of compulsive disorder, and then family members.
I have a question about that before we dive into the rest of your story.
Yeah.
You brought up a good point about when there is something going on, addiction, whatever it may be, that the other family members or the people close to the other person are going through some stuff too. And that's not really, talked about. I know there's Al-Anon out there, but they take a little different approach when they do stuff. What do you see when, say, you're working with someone and they have their addiction or their issue, and you start working with them, and you also see that their family or people they associate with is part of their problem?
Hmm. Well, that's usually what I see, frankly. That's just the reality of it. There's a saying, I think, for colleagues and people that do somewhat similar work, or even just that work at some of the treatment centers with which I'm affiliated. We say the families are often sicker, um, because it's true. That's part of what has brought me, you know, brought such passion in me around the issue, is seeing how under attenuated that part of it was. And obviously we know, like, the ridiculous rates of recidivism for different kinds of addiction, and seeing people go through the cycle of, say, like a 30-day treatment, and go back into that same environment. And when people hear that, they're thinking about, like, oh, they're hanging around bad kids, or on like the corner around some broken bottles or something. Like, no, I'm talking about, like, you're going back into your parents' basement. That's If that's what got you to where you were, we probably don't want to return you right there, or we want to change some things about that dynamic and bring education to it. So, one, I guess I address that in a lot of ways. One of the ways would be education. Um, so I have three main areas, like, around which I do either like educational seminars, um, or just family like appointments, and they are the neurobiology of addiction, um, family dynamics, interpersonal relationships slash attachment styles, and grief and loss, which, quite frankly, is probably going to get renamed at some point soon, to because it's a lot about trauma.
Is grief and loss right now, and I'm sidetracking, but it's more of a curiosity than anything else. Is that how it's defined in the, what is it, the DSM-5 or something like that? As opposed, are they going to change that? Is that what you mean, or is,
No,
like, you're redefining grief and loss as trauma? Oh, English is the second language for me today. Uh,
I
as
speak
trauma.
trimal.
You speak trauma? Oh, good. It's not just
I'm
me.
fluent in trimal. No, it's nothing to do with the DSM that I'm referencing. It's really just like, those are the kind of the titles of those presentate topics,
All right,
or
I see what you're saying.
groups that I facilitate and stuff.
Trauma is a word that you hear a hell of a lot more often now than you've ever heard. I feel like it's overused, to be
Probably,
honest.
yeah.
But it is, like, everything turns into trauma if it's bad, right? So, but that's not really how trauma is defined, I don't believe.
No,
Maybe
right.
you can clarify that one for us.
So that's interesting the way that you're asking. Obviously, there's a difference between like trauma and CPTSD, complex PTSD. Um, the way I define it, I couldn't quote like the DSM right now,
Which is
frankly,
fine.
but
It doesn't have to be as like
no,
we're just
no,
shooting the breeze here too. So
yeah, absolutely. This is very much. I'm excited to be able to share my personal definition because this is how I like clients and other people to think about it. Um, that you're familiar with the 12 steps, obviously, as well. From I know from our conversation, and there's a lot of work around resentment. And in a similar way, I define that for people as anything that has occurred in your life or happened to you that changed the way that you see yourself, the people around you, or your place in the world, what your function is. Um, so that doesn't necessarily mean it's trauma, but like in that clinical DSM sense, but it still comprises the areas that I want to go into with people. That's how I define like those type of events or inflection points in a person's life. That's really like the meat of where I want to get.
basically, what I'm hearing you say is almost like an event that changes a current belief that you have, right?
That's
Changes the
exactly your whole if it changes your belief system.
Yep. Right. It's an event that changes your belief system, and then that then changes the perspective in which you see the world.
Yes, that's what I'm more interested in,
All right. Yep.
in terms of working with people.
I'll just put that in my words than just rephrasing it. So
No, it's
that's
perfect.
that's
Yeah. I like
go
to
ahead,
think
Jeff.
of trauma is the word is something we just throw in the basket. How we got to where we are today. It's just a catch-all we could throw in this basket and catch it all because there's a lot to it. Like you're saying, there's different stuff. Uh, as the word being overused, if we really wanted to have that conversation of where we're at and when that belief system changed, we have to sit down and have a conversation about it. But we can use that basket to catch all and just say trauma.
Hmm.
If we're speaking with some groups of people, we can just use that. But here in this setting, we can really unpack that basket and get into where those beliefs changed. And I think we're going to go into that a little bit in a little bit here.
There's another, and now I see why you are the listed as the analytical one. That was very well summarized.
He just leaves that one there. It was there, I think, when we started. It's not like we chose that, but I he might have wrote it in. He's pretty good about. He's good though. He's earning it.
Here's the another term that I use, and really just this is just based off of the people from whom I really influence or was influenced and from whom I learned. We talk about like little T trauma and big T trauma. Now I'm talking about this here with you guys. If in most public settings, I might not just drop that term because it can obviously be very easily misunderstood and
Yeah.
you know
Welcome to the world
really
we
real.
live in, anyways, dude.
Right. True.
I mean, come
True.
on. You might as well just talk.
I think an important distinction. I mean, because so many another common like almost like a joke that we have is everyone comes into whatever kind of treatment or life improvement or change, behavioral change they're trying to accomplish. Almost everyone says, "I don't really have any trauma. I don't have any trauma." I mean, I would guess like 95% of people say that, and just in my personal experience, very unscientific quote there.
That's probably bang on.
Yeah, yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
but it really just seems like everyone, including me, including me, and I would have passed a polygraph. I did not believe that I had experienced trauma as I understood it in my life, and uh, as we'll probably get into, not only had I obviously experienced trauma, I would experience some capital T trauma, and really just avoided it for 30 some years.
Do you want to go into that?
Yeah, if it's, I mean, it might be a little bit heavy um, to go into, but yeah, sure. I'll tell you. Steve and I talked about this, I think, briefly in our talk. And I shared with you the experience I had after one of those neurofeedback session.
Yeah.
Gosh, I should have absolutely looked. I forget what type of neurofeedback this is, but it's a particular derivation of neurofeedback. Go ahead,
Some
Steve.
sort of it was some sort of hypnosis, wasn't it?
It's almost like because it basically tries to keep your brain at a certain, basically it tries to keep you sort of static or in a stasis of one kind of brainwave, and I can't for the life of me think right now of what the hell one it is, but irrelevant. I You have to do I think like 50 sessions of neurofeedback before you can do this, like before it's deemed effective. Um, and It's not unlike the rest of neurofeedback. It's not necessarily seeking to address any particular like areas of the brain where certain behaviors are controlled, like anger, aggression, or ADHD, or etc. Um, and I did it, and it's an hour long as opposed to like a normal half hour, 40-minute neurofeedback session. And I actually, I thought I fell asleep. So I mean, I was finished with it. Neurofeedback is generally interactive. You're interacting with something, and this is you're just basically you're supposed to listen for a certain tone, um, and that's really it. So I came out of it feeling like, well, that's the deepest I've ever meditated before. I'm not one to fall asleep like I need the right circumstances to fall asleep. So it was different for me, and that night I had a dream that I had, and this is a very common dream for me to. I always dream about football, and I had taken a new job like I have many times before, installing an offense to the team as I have many times before, except this time instead of like maybe 60 kids or so, it was like 300 or 400 kids. We were in like a gymnasium, and I'm installing from my PowerPoint and drawing on the board and stuff, and then I get to a slide, and on the slide is basically just a synopsis of something that happened to me when I was 7. Um, and it's not wasn't one of those situations where I had completely repressed it and did not know about it at all. It was just that over the ensuing years, I became so adept at, if that thought entered my mind, I was so good at getting it right out. I was so, over the years, just became so practiced at pushing it right out, and not sitting with it at all. And obviously, that dream illuminated that in a very different context for me, and did bring back some more specific memories. And the following day, I was uh, I was in treatment at this time, and the following day I was in a group, and this had just been like increasingly gaining stressful momentum throughout the day for me, and harder, testing my strength to be able to push it out of my mind. And I was sitting in a group, and I just got up and I walked out. And somewhat like a panic attack, I guess. I just needed to be outside. I don't know. It's a tough feeling to describe, and because there's so much adrenaline and so much around it that it's a tough memory to fully recall. But it that's when it really boiled to the surface. I was really lucky where I was. I developed a great relationship with the clinical director, a guy named Jeff Breckage, um, and who is actually like my best friend now, and very much a mentor, and we just have like a really cool relationship. But he, one of the like techs, one of the younger people that works there was like, okay, this kid, or this, kid, I was like 32, but this guy, maybe we should go get Jeff because everyone knows how good Jeff. And I sat down with Jeff, and I think it took me like 40 minutes to actually make the words come out of my
Hmm.
mouth. I literally could not say, I couldn't say it. I still struggle sometimes, to be honest with you, to say like certain terminology around it, like molestation.
Hmm.
It just,
Words that
uh,
burn that come out of your mouth, man. The truth is sometimes the hardest pill we have to swallow,
yeah,
right?
no question.
So,
Absolutely.
I mean, I feel you there. I've had my fair share of times where the words would not come out for the life of me. So I can relate to that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think I know part of it is protective. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, like the SUD scale, like subjective units of distress, but I just use the word sudsy when someone gets um, emotionally distressed enough that it starts to impair their thinking. I can see it, and usually try and I do different practices and exercises to try and like ground them a little bit and get back. But I was so sudsy. I was just, I mean, I could not speak. I couldn't speak. Looking back on it, Jeff and I laugh about it all the time, like because I have to, and he's got a similar dark sense of humor. But it took me a long time to even be able to say what was going on for me, let alone unpack that situation at all.
Over time, I mean, the first time we ever talk about an experience that has that sort of life alteringness to it, uh, especially when we've put it away for so very long, it it comes out it comes out with barbs on it.
Yeah, comes out. I mean, we're basically purging it, you know.
Yeah, right. And but one of the beautiful things about talking, and I'm a huge proponent about talking about stuff. I mean, I will say this from I will up and down, sideways, the whole deal. I'm a huge proponent of getting it out rather than holding it in and talking about it or journaling it, one or the other. But when I give it away to someone, I put some air underneath it, and it's no longer my only my burden to carry.
No
So
question.
when that happens, it becomes easier and easier to talk about those things that hurt, and then you develop, like you said, you develop a relationship with a guy, and you can joke about your reaction to what like and it's okay to throw some humor at it every once in a while. Like it
I have to.
right, like it's a defense mechanism. It's a way to soothe whatever happened. It's a way to like, even though it's not a good thing, you can still make light of it in a way that you can live with, because that's the main thing, right? The main thing is, can I give this thing a perspective in which I can live with now?
Hmm. And just as naming it, like you're saying, giving it a name takes away some of the power that it has over you. I think if you've actually processed it, then being able to laugh about some of the parts of that experience is to me often a good sign
Yeah,
because it
you're
shows me
healing.
you've
Yeah,
processed
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, you're
definitely.
healing. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
You know, you suppressed whatever it was for that long, and then it took that long to finally get it out, and it hurt so bad to get it out. Like you almost have to bring laughter or some humility back with it because it hurts so bad. It Now you can look back and go, why the fuck was I holding that in? We know now, like if we could just let stuff out, like Steve was saying, give space, or we could change the name or whatever. It's like, and there's just that little quick punch that gives you right back. It's like, why was I holding it? And I know for me, and it's just giving some laughter behind it. It's like, what was I thinking? Why did it take so long to get that out? There's a lot of stuff that goes with that, and we all know that. And that's why, we started this is to give men the voice, quit being so silent. Like a lot of shit has happened in our lives, the good, the bad, but sitting in silence, like, Mike, is just what it did to you and what it's done to us. It just rips us apart. Then once we get that barb out of there and just pull that hook out, it's like, oh, I can breathe. And now I kind of find it funny that I held it in that long. But it's not, it's not funny, but you know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know. That's just sometimes how I have to look at shit and wonder why I hold stuff in. Then I'm like, dumbass, and I just laugh about it.
It's a way healthier way to cope with it than it is throwing it in a freaking bottle and putting it way back
Uh,
here. Like carry it's I always like to I call it my emotional backpack. And
huh?
so
Yeah.
you carry that around with you all the time. And every time you carried that around from 7 years old until the day you decided to talk about it, and as soon as you started, wow, English is a second language again. As soon as you started talking about it,
Speaking to me, Tamil again.
yeah, as soon as you started talking about it, that backpack gets lighter. It just does. It's terrifying, but the backpack gets lighter, and so you no longer have to carry that rock, that boulder, like you did before. It feels different. It feels
Let
different when
alone,
you.
I was saying, let alone among all the other rocks that are in that backpack
Mhm.
that
Yeah,
we
and sometimes
accumulate over
it's easier
life.
to throw the small ones out after that, right?
Mhm.
You're just like, oh,
Absolutely.
I just got rid of this big one. What's this little one I'm holding on to? Oh, that's nothing compared to what I just let out. But that's breaking
Yeah, I
that
think
silence
that's
and breaking that stigma. Or there's so much to it, as men.
There's so much to it. That's exactly why we're here.
there really is because I mean, why do we hold on to it? And why is it like you were mentioning, Robbie? Like, why do we hold on to things to the point that it's actually becomes comical in retrospect, or just maybe absurd? Is a better word for what it is. Well, it's because it's painful, and what do we do? What's our human nature? To move away from pain, to avoid things that are painful, or things that cause us fear. That's just like a survival instinct. And so, like you said, Steve, it's a tough pill to swallow. I mean, yeah, it's one that's extremely painful. And if you have that, or you have these other pills you could swallow, that it becomes a much easier decision.
It sure does. Now, you mentioned uh extremely masculine environment, right? You come from a football NFL coaching NFL player?
No, 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 no,
Oh,
no,
okay. So
never.
NFL
No.
coaching?
Yes, coaching. Yep. And I was a scout. I think for like 2 of the years I spent in football, but the rest coaching.
Right. So like you come from, and if anyone listening here is going to say, football. Oh yeah, that's absolutely probably an extremely masculine environment. So how does that pile on?
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. First of all, I would have to say that, I have been out of football for like 8 or 9 seasons now, in my career.
I
And
love how you say seasons, not years. You
that's
still
how
you're still speaking in football terms.
when do we start talking about about I'm in yards, I'm talking everything is yards to
Cards.
me.
Yeah,
This just came up in conversation earlier. He's
that's
like
funny.
13 yards. I was like, yeah, it was like a comeback route away. You know?
Amazing.
But yeah, yeah, it does. That environment, and it likely had, from the outside looking in, and I don't pay super close attention, but obviously still have a lot of friends in that industry, and I think things have changed a little bit, for the better. I know that there is necessarily more mental health support available to people, to players and staff, than there was in my first couple years. I saw that. I saw some change in that even over my time. My like those 15 years, I saw some progression in that way, which was good. But at the same time, the dynamics that we talk about, men having, just culturally, in that environment, it's like, it's just under like, it's like magnified. you know it's all of those things that, you're there to prove you have these abilities that are very much associated with masculinity. So I think inherently it just fosters that kind of environment. Um, for me personally, and relating to my childhood trauma, that was never a thought, that really occurred to me around within those years. But I will say I was obviously struggling with mental health tremendously, and eventually addiction. And there is, to me, I think my own. I have to own my own misperception at that time about the weakness that I saw that as, that kept me hiding for so long. Um, and I'll at the same time recognize that that was being reinforced around me left and right. Things like when you're dealing with players, or like especially speculative players, like for the NFL draft and stuff, or free agents, and you're there's a very physical, analysis that goes into that, and then medical is part of that too, and then personality, is a huge part of that, especially for the best organizations. They really, consider what type of people they're bringing in. I think even more so. And when you're hearing a player who took a semester off because of depression, and there's literally a flag on your board for that. It kind of reinstills those feelings. It doesn't exactly make it a welcome environment to be like, oh, hey, that's me.
Yeah, well, I just lost an opportunity. I have to make sure I don't show that side of me, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, there was so much of me I felt I couldn't show.
So, with the
Sure.
NFL pretty much being, you know, paid violence, really. That's how, I kind of look at it as we're paying to watch these people go out there and battle over a ball, a sport, a legacy, all those things. How many of those people come in damaged with we'll just, use the word trauma because the hobby that I like to do, just spending hours with people on the trail and talking with them, most of them have had some kind of issue in their childhood, their adult life, whatever, and that's how we go and get it out is on the trail, doing adventures, being in the mountains, stuff like that. How many, how often did you see that with these players coming in? That's how they dealt with their issues was with being able to hurt someone and get paid for it, and their ego.
Did not. I very, very rarely, and possibly never, I try not to speak in absolutes, but probably never saw somebody um, who had come in with trauma, like, oh, and heard them openly talk about it or had a private conversation with them about it at the professional level. At the college level, I would say it's a little bit different, especially if I was at like if I was coaching at a smaller school. Um, there is the kids are younger, they're more progressive thinking, um, and obviously all of these things I'm saying are generalizations, but it's just my experience. And I think because of the type of person I am and the type of relationship that I would have with players as a coach, I did have some very meaningful conversations and things happen with players um, in college. So again, I think that hopefully that speaks to the destigmatization um, being somewhat of a at least moving in the right direction. Um, Also, I was like as an older coach, I had my footing. I felt just a stronger footing, and I don't know. I always had just a great, like a really genuine human interest in the human, um, which kind of made it a tough fit sometimes. But as a coach, it's just impossible for me, just like it is now, and my work now has a lot of similarities. Um, it's impossible for me to work with someone and not have emotional investment in it. And kids pick up on that. By kids, I mean young men pick up on that, especially if they've been starved for it, for most of their lives. All of a sudden, they get to college, and here's this like person who's themselves, very comfortable in themselves, and I know I respect them because they keep their word and whatever, whatever led them to feel comfortable with me. But uh, I did have, well, I had one time there a player came out to me. I was not his position coach, nor on his side of the football. I was the offense coordinator, but he so I found that really I mean I took that so that really honored me. I felt really really honored to be trusted in that way, and we kind of figured out what he wanted to do with that and how he wanted to let other people know, within the team. We went, worked through like what the fears were of not being accepted. If because when he came in, he was a mess. He doesn't, thinking this is the end of his. I can't. These two things are mutually exclusive. Um, so yeah, help. That's an example of when someone directly exposed something very vulnerable to them to me. But again, that's a pretty exceptional situation, I would say.
I'm like getting the feeling that it's so masculine, and in that sport. Once you walk through the door, you check your feelings and your emotions, and it's all about work.
That is what is correlated to winning games, and which means making money.
Yeah.
And obviously there are organizations with different levels of balance in that regard. Um, and I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. I think you can care about the human and be competitive. However, it's such a high pressure environment. It's just so competitive that, yeah, like there might as well be a sign that says check your feelings at the fucking door. I mean, you don't even need it because you just know. Look, like I gotta put my head down and work because if freaking some 1,000-yard receiver is, expendable, certainly I am.
Is, we see not so much now, but when I was younger, a lot of the the players would either get forced in retirement with an injury or they retire too late, too many, concussions, stuff like that. And I've noticed this with some college athletes too. Like they're so forced either by their parents or their own willpower that, well, football is the only thing that I have to live for, and that's all I got. Then, luckily enough, they can go through the NFL and have a career or whatever sport they're playing professionally. And then when it's over, it's just like their life is gone. Uh, and hearing you talk about, checking your feelings at the door, like when we think about kids sports, especially like with my daughter, like it's a team environment. Like they're talking about their emotions, they're talking about their feelings. And I watched that's how they team build. And when I played football when I was younger, there wasn't much team building. It was after we were done practice, that's where the team building really happened. Us goofing around and chasing girls or doing stuff like that. But it's just so sad to watch these guys spend their whole life chasing this football, then they're done and their life just falls apart. Um, but just hearing you, say check your feelings at the door, and that's just kind of what it is. I totally understand. This is a business. First and foremost, this is a business. There's a lot of money involved. People are getting paid. These players are getting paid, but it it's reminding
Lots.
me of addiction. Like they're done. They don't know how to live their life after their career, and all this shit is just opening up now. And it's just when I'm just hearing you say that, I'm just saying this out loud now. It's just very interesting to me.
Yeah, that's an interesting parallel because it's like a point at which you're like, who am I now? And coincidentally, I can relate to both. Addiction was never my identity, but it was part of my story. Football was my identity. I mean, from an early age, it was just such a part of me. I felt like people expected me to be the GM of, whatever NFL team. And then my first job out of college was with the Ravens, or they are in Baltimore. I don't know who knows what about football or anything, but that's where I'm from. So that was a lot of very, very strong and in retrospect damaging messaging came through to me. And when I say that, I don't put that on anybody else. I mean the way in which I received it.
Mhm.
Um, that all that external validation, um, and from all the different typical sources, like notoriety, pe- people's like admiration or respect for you, or whatever, money, status and stuff like that. And look, was not at the top of the pyramid or anything either, but as like a 22-year-old, when that was my first job, it was a really big deal. And that entrenched all of those previously held beliefs for me very, very strongly, that this is what you're worth. This is your identity. This is what makes you admirable and, someone who has value. And when when I moved on from football, there was very much the kind of dynamic you're describing, where it's what is my identity now? Who the fuck am I without football, without this job keeping me busy all the time in a way I love, but also without all this external validation? What do people think of me? You know, that's how I felt. I always felt people expected so much from me, and making that change felt like I was not meeting people's expectations, even though it's a change that I made myself. And there's no coincidence that correlated to the nadir of my mental health in general, within the next within 2 years. The next 2 years were rough, very, 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 very bad, uh, in a lot of ways.
You leave the thing that you lived for, and you no longer have that to live for. So now you're trying to find what the fuck to live for again. And it's got to be
Absolutely.
something different, and it's got to look different, and it's because I mean, you left that for whatever reason that was personal to you, and now what do I do? It's a hard thing to do when that becomes a major part of who you are, and a major part of what made you feel good.
Absolutely. And that's why I empathize with players. I mean, we hear more about this experience, I think, from the player's point of view, like Robbie was talking about. I just directly empathize with that so often because I had the same identity crisis, um, the same, and it's really a crisis of esteem too,
Hmm.
um, and it often leads, it led me, to look for it in some bad places. Um,
Well, it's all a dopamine hit one way or another, right?
that's what I was after, man. That's what I
So
was after.
Yeah.
it's all a dopamine hit one way or another. So when it all falls off and then the depression hits and whatever that comes along afterwards, because I mean, even in my own experience, when you take away something that was giving you a lot of good feelings and a lot of validation, when it goes away, you still it's there's a gaping hole there. You still want to figure out it's like a natural thing that you want to do, especially if you don't know how to cope with it. And
Of
a
course not.
lot of professionals in general, if they lose or walk away from the profession, this is the same thing with people that have worked for 45 years in the same industry, like
It
millwrights
is.
and electricians and stuff like that. Like they've worked their entire life doing the same thing, waking up every day, and then you take that away from them when they're 65. You got 40, 65%, they get 40 years of that kind of dedication to something. And even if it's 5 years of that kind of dedication to something, you poured your life into it, and it gave you so much, like you said, esteem. It gave you ladies. It gave you cars. It gave you lots of stuff that that come with that environment, right? And so, sure, what do you do after? It's a
Yeah, it's like swimming in a pool and they just drain it all of a sudden. It's just instantly drained.
fish out of water, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
pond's
Yeah.
empty, and
You're
you're
just
just
flopping
flopping
around.
around,
Yeah.
going,
Where do I go to next? What's
right.
down this hole? What's through this filter? You know?
And what makes it harder for us men is talking about it, right? We don't want to talk about that. Like you're talking about your esteem. Like if you told, a group of men like, "Hey, I'm done with my football career." Um, you're gonna get a bunch of like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing that? This is the wrong decision." You may get a few, well, whatever, right? Um, but we get so guarded in that because that's all we know, and we protect it, and we don't tell anyone. We tell people that are close to us. Um, family members, stuff like that. Like I gave up my career to move to Rapid City to be with my daughter, and I had a few people there on my side, and I had more people not on my side, and it got to the point where I'm like, I'm just not even going to talk about it with these people. The people that do care, will I'll keep close and understand, but it's not even worth. But you know what that led me to do? My esteem went away. Like my self worth just went to shit because I
Mm.
identified as this person. I've done this for this many years. I don't do that anymore. Who am I? Uh, and you know, the one thing that kept me going is I'm coming here to spend time with my daughter and be in my daughter's life. But even that had its days where it was super hard of why am I doing that for my daughter? Um,
Your whole definition of success changes,
yeah.
Oh God, yeah, yeah.
right?
That's
That's what
so
I'm hearing
true.
you talk about is your
Absolutely,
whole definition of success changes.
absolutely.
And that success was not masculine. It had no masculinity tied to it. It had weird stuff tied to it. There was a lot of ego involved, but and some other stuff. But you know, you tell a bunch of group of guys you're going to spend time with your daughter, whatever, right? You're gonna get whatever. But and I'm sure it was the same thing with you, Mike. You tell a bunch of group of guys you're leaving the NFL, they're like, "Oh man, that was my dream to be in the NFL," and you're giving that up. Yeah, I'm giving that up. And you know, Steve, the same thing when you decided to quit your job. It was the same thing. Like those guys are been there for 20, 30 years, and they're like, "Why would you give up this position? Uh, why would you give up this success?" That's a better way to put it, like you said.
Yeah, but and like Steve said, it's because you're over time, at least for me, my definition of success changed completely. Um, it was what it was, you know, through football and all those other things and like academics and stuff, and then it was like in limbo for a couple years um, until I really found myself again.
That's one of the things I always got caught up in was the permanence of it. Like if I gave something a definition, it had to be exactly what it was, and for some reason it always had to last forever. So like the job that I was
Hmm.
working in or whatever it was, like I gave it a sense of permanence. It had to be. There was no fluidity in it. I didn't allow myself to change what that definition was. So even if you removed that success, the good career that I had built, there was still no fluidity in it. So like I'm stuck in the emptiness that's there instead of having the ability to look forward to what can this look like now.
Yeah.
And that's what I
Yeah.
mean by the permanence of it.
Yeah, I think that's a great description. It's like you're blinded by the void around you, right? I
Hmm.
mean, I very much
And
felt that.
it's also society's part in it too, where it's just, you know, go to college, get in this career, you know, get your 401k and retirement going, 65, you retire, sit on your front porch and
Right.
drink coffee, and that's going to be the good life, which we now know is not. Uh, but I know that was driven into my head from a very young age. That's what my life's supposed to be. And that's the permanence of that too. It's like, choose your path and stick with it. There's no fluidity in, you know, masculinity. There's like, if we look back to hunter gatherer days, it was fluid. It was changing quite a bit. If we had to pick up camp and move, we had to pick up camp and move. If we had to hunt a different animal because we overhunted one animal, we had to hunt it. It was okay. That was part of life. But now we're like, we put these blinders on. You get your career and you're supposed to just stay there. You're supposed to raise a
Mm.
family, have the white picket fence. And that's what life's supposed to be by who? Society, which is shit.
That's a really good point. It's like we develop in order to be successful, and especially in some of these ultra competitive fields, like you necessarily have to be myopic. And like if you have a family life, you know what I mean, outside of that, it's especially just in like these, I'm sure in the like high end like corporate world too, I'm sure it's the same way. It's like, what are you doing, man? this is it. This is what it's about.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's, I mean, that gets drilled into you. I know in the corporate world where I come from or where I came from, uh, they would tell you that your family was important, but when
Yeah,
it
right.
came time to make your family important, you got the guilt trip
Absolutely.
for making your family important. Like you were abandoning your post at work. And it leaves you very confused because how is one thing supposed to be important? And then finally, I take the opportunity to do that. And then when I do that, I get shit on. So you can't have your cake and eat it too, but that's exactly what the message is.
Or yeah, or it seems to be expected. Exactly.
It is. It's there's an I don't know. That's exactly what it seems like. I don't know that it will ever get away with it. Probably one of the main reasons why I'd like to run my own company at some point in time. I understand that when you do that sort of thing, there's cost involved with everything. And when someone's not around, it it costs the other people. I understand that too. At the same time, there's still a give and take. It's like when you take a week's vacation and then get a guilt trip because you took a week's vacation that you're allowed to take for crying out loud.
That you work for.
Then exactly.
Dude, you're not. I mean, there's so many like little things that come to mind. Just things I couldn't do. Oh man, I left European vacation early. I left my wife in Paris, and you're just feeling because I really that because I was serving a different master, you know. And
That's
honestly, even if
bullshit.
if my ex wife was upset about that at the time, which she was, understandably,
Ex-wife.
yeah, ex
Yeah.
wife, very
Yeah,
important to
yeah,
say,
yeah,
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 very.
yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I I get it, right? Serving a different master.
But at the same time, that's while she was upset about maybe that particular situation, some of the pressure to serve that master of career, success, money, prestige, recognition or whatever, she wanted me to serve that master too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
And it's weird that you put it that way because she knew she was getting the validation from that too, right? My
Very
husband
much so.
is
Yeah.
yeah, is working in the NFL and he does this, right? She gets to tell all of her friends that, so she gets, oh, that's so cool, validation, right? Uh, then
It's
That's a
also
big part of the
the
dynamic.
yeah, it's
yeah,
also the same thing that causes the damage likely.
yeah, right, the resentment after that and
Of
the whole
course.
other shit. Uh,
What a way to
yeah.
roll. Um, when I first talked to you on the phone and even talking to you here, like you have a soft demeanor, you're soft spoken, like you're kind, you have a really inviting aura about you. You just do. You
Yeah.
do not come across as a coach.
Yeah,
Like you
I
don't
know.
come across as the typical and maybe you did at one point in time, but the the version of Mike that I see today is a very personal, very people person. He's got a soft heart on him, and that's just what I'm seeing. And it seems to me like that's probably for me anyways, coming from my own personal experience, I always had a soft side that I never got to use. And it looks like to me something that I'm seeing is you always had the soft side but you never really got to use it. Now you have a chance to use it in your new practice and your new endeavors.
To be honestly, that has always been me. And while I did a lot of things in my previous life that weren't representative of what my values are now, or possibly even were at that time, uh, my personality really has not changed too much, to be honest with you. I've always kind of been a ball buster. I've always, I think, like you said, I've been very approachable. I think this is why I, I think it was a huge reason for the success I've had with players, especially as I became a more seasoned coach and and really mastering teaching fundamentals and different concepts and things like that. I still kept that personality. And yeah, and I think that's why players like gravitated toward me. But however, there were other jobs, there were other coaches and stuff that I think found that weird or threatening, or just not what they wanted in their culture probably. Because I think you're right. I mean, I definitely recognize that. You know, when you're a coach, you have to be you are a position in a position of authority. Um, and I think people just handle that differently. And that was never something that made me really change my personality. I like to get the same as I do with my career now. I like I find the most success comes from authentic buy-in. And if I want this guy to perform to his best, and that doesn't just mean on Sunday or Saturday, it means a year of like rigid training and all this stuff and meeting with me and going through film, all this kind of things. If I really want that, this kid has to know I'm bought into him. Um, and it's not a manipulation. It's just I honestly, it's one of my favorite things about myself. I'm happy that I'm that way because I don't know, that part at least has served me well. It just kind of comes naturally. But thank you for that. That's a compliment. Thank you for calling me soft.
You could be two types of soft. You could be the pudgy kind of soft, or you can have a warm heart.
I've always had a warm heart. I had a player's parent tell me one time. Just that phrase, that term you just said, just made me think about that. That I had a player's parent come up to me one time and just tell me that something to that effect, that they had never had their son coached that way. That was just very meaningful or impactful to them, and that's the kind of thing. It's like, well, there, yeah, I am soft because I feel that.
Robbie, feel like that's a wrap, mister?
Yeah, this was a wonderful conversation.
Yeah, this was great, Mike. I appreciate you taking the time to spend with us and have a really cool conversation about trauma and some of the extremely masculine environments and everything else that we spoke about in between. It was, like I said, it was a really good pleasure to have a conversation with you over the phone before we got to meet with you on here. And I'm hoping that uh, this isn't the last time we talk either, because you're a real joy
Yeah,
to speak with.
great.
Thanks, man. Likewise. Honestly, this has been fun. This has been the kind of thing that and kind of conversations I would have with friends, so I really appreciate it. It's Now I hear NASCAR. Who's
Yeah,
watching
I know. I
NASCAR?
was like, my neighbors. I got my window open, and my neighbor that was having a birthday party. and they're bikers across the road.
Boy.
And so you can't really tell, but there's their garage,
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
music is just a blaring, and you can't see the motorcycle no more, but now you can see the rest of my recording studio.
Oh.
uh the one thing I always end every episode with is I talk about the silence that men sit in, and that it's important for us to let anybody, any guy watching right now, that if he needs some people to talk to, that there are men out there that are willing to listen. I know for myself, and from just speaking with you, Mike, and I know Robbie's story too, that we all three of us suffered in silence at some point in our lives. And when we took the opportunity to speak to someone, and for me it was a stranger didn't have any skin in the game, but they were able to
Uh-huh.
show up with a hell of a lot of compassion when I needed it. And so, once again, to any of the listeners that have made it this far into this episode, and if you need a guy to talk to, you're welcome to reach out to myself, Mike, or Robbie, or any of the other previous guests on here, because this is the reason why Robbie and I started this podcast, to give a voice to men that need one, that need to hear something similar to their story, so they can find the courage to talk about the stuff that hurts and that holds them back. Because from my own personal experience, as soon as I started talking about it, I stopped being held back from my own bullshit.
Hmm. Absolutely. It's that
So
isolation. All of a sudden, it's not there anymore.
it's not
Yeah.
there anymore,
It's
and you start finding people and friends in places that are on your side. It's lonely out there when you can't, when you look left and you look right and you look up and you look down, and it doesn't feel like there's a single fucking safe place to speak. And I don't know how to make this stop, and I don't know how to get myself out of this mess, and I don't know, and I don't know, and I don't know, and I'm fucking supposed to.
sounds a lot like my internal dialogue for many
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Yep.
mean, it's a lot of men's internal dialogue.
Yeah.
This is the reason why we're here. So if you're, like I said, if you're still listening right now and you need someone to reach out to, there's two wonderful men and myself that are willing to listen. So thanks for being here, and thanks for being a part of Forged in Silence podcast, man.
Thanks so much, both you guys. Look forward to talking more.